Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to HGO Digital. I'm Perrin Leach. I'm the Managing Director of Houston Grand Opera, and we're absolutely thrilled to have you here with us tonight. And for those of you who've been here before, welcome back. And for those of you who haven't been with us up to this point, then welcome. This is going to be a very, very special night. I think that you'll have an absolute ball watching Vinkensport. This is the place, the pre-performance talk, essentially, about how we talk about Vinkensport and let you know what you're going to see. Tonight's performances, our entire digital performance series is underwritten by Sarah and Ernest Butler in the performance series. We're deeply grateful to Sarah and Ernest. We really couldn't do it without them. And the other people we couldn't do it without are Houston Methodists. Houston Methodists are our health advisors, and they've been able to keep us very, very safe. They oversee all of our protocols, and we're very proud that after 6 of these projects, no one has fallen ill. So that's the most important thing for us, is to make sure that people can work, but can work safely and well. And you'll see just how much fun people have when you allow them to do an environment where they're feeling safe and well. Tonight's performance will also highlight the newly formed Texas Opera Alliance. So Vinkensport was co-directed by Loren Meeker, who's the general and artistic director of San Antonio Opera, and also conducted by Timothy Myers, who is the music director of Austin Opera. Tonight's show is being streamed live on Facebook for those of you who wanted to see it that way, YouTube as well, and obviously on the HGO and the Opera San Antonio websites. So a big welcome now to us Opera San Antonio friends who are joining us now. You're very, very welcome. The Opera Alliance is about celebrating opera in Texas, and we're absolutely thrilled that you've joined us tonight. So coming on now, Jeremy Johnson is going to give you an insight into why the piece Vinkensport, what it's about, and how to understand it a little bit more. But first, we're going to be joined by a couple of very special guests. So as I said before, Loren Meeker is the General Director of Opera San Antonio and the co-director of Vinkensport, a personal friend of mine, a really top person, and she really had fun. So I'm going to hand over to you, Loren, now and say, here you go, all yours.
Hi, Perrin. Thank you so much for having me. We always have fun together. Ever since I've met you, I can say that with truth and honesty. So I'm absolutely thrilled to have been here for 2 projects, the first of which we're seeing tonight, Vinkensport or the Finch Opera, and next month for the Impresario as well. And I am thrilled that those opportunities have come about thanks to the Texas Opera Alliance. We're going to keep creating and innovating here in Texas, and that excites me to no end. And I'm also extremely excited to be sharing time with you tonight in this live pre-show opportunity that's streaming on HGO social media platforms and Opera San Antonio social media platforms. And the fact that we're able to collaborate together is just awesome and stunning. So thank you, Perrin, and thank you, HGO.
Of course.
Yeah. So we brought a guest here from Opera San Antonio along with us as well, and she's very special to me. She's near and dear to many of us here at Opera San Antonio. This is Annie Labatt. Hi, Annie.
Hello, Loren. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So Annie is an associate professor and director of galleries at Sweetbriar College, and she's also Opera San Antonio's guest lecturer. She's amazing. Thus, we have her here this evening. And so Annie is actually going to give us a little insight tonight on this bizarre sport, this Flemish sport that our opera is all about and centered around. So Annie, why don't you take it away?
I will. Just one quick question. Am I muted or not muted?
You're not muted.
No, there you go. Before I start and tell you about the fun things of Vinkensport and birds in general in the 16th century, I do want to tell you how to watch this opera, and I'm going to read it from a script. Just so that you know, the opera is not, we're not watching the video of the opera in this stream right here. You have to go to a different venue. This is just the pre-show stream. The performance itself will be streamed on Houston Grand Opera's website and through Marquee TV. So there are 3 ways of getting to Vinkensport. The first is that you download the Marquee TV app on your smart device. You can do this on your smart TV. Just give yourself a little time for all the letters and how long that takes. You create a login and then you're good to go. Or you can go directly to marquee.tv in a web browser, create a login again, and you can access the whole HGO season for free. And your third option, hgo.org/ digital, you use the HGO login credentials or create an HGO login and you can watch the whole season there for free as well. So those are your options. If you have any questions or comments, you can type them into the comment boxes on Facebook or YouTube, and people will respond to them. Not me, though, because I'm going to be telling you about 16th century art, believe it or not. First, I'm going to start with what is Vinkensport. It's 2 words together. It's Finch sport. So we're going to be hearing a lot about birds. The idea is that, and Jeremy's going to talk a little bit more about this after I speak, during the contest or the game, the sport, depends on how you want to see it, and we'll think about that together. The birds are lined up in a row, and they're all in small little cages, and they each hold a single male finch set at an interval between each other. And the managers of the birds, and of course we're going to have a lot of managers in our opera, they make little white ticks on a long black stick every time that the bird makes a chirp, and this is called a suscuit. Is that right, Lauren?
A suscuit.
There it is.
I got you, Annie. It's suscuit.
Perfect. So this little sound that the bird makes is actually the bird establishing his territory. It's a mating call. Ironically, he's in a tiny little box, so the territory is confined. But there are a lot of ironies in this opera, in this sport, and we will think about those together. So the sport started in the 16th century in Flanders. This is the Dutch-speaking portion of Belgium. And this is this region that is really prominent in the artistic world. You may have heard of the Italian Renaissance, but there was also a Northern Renaissance, which created formed the capacity for wonderful artists like Van Eyck and the artist I'm going to talk about today, mainly Bruegel and also Bosch. So all from this area. The game really started from merchants. They were the genesis of this particular game. And incidentally, these merchants brought a lot of wealth to this region. And that hence is why we had such a beautiful artistic renaissance. Just like in the Italian Renaissance, you got wealthy bankers. In the Northern Renaissance, you have wool merchants, wealthy wool merchants. And that's why when you look at Northern Renaissance art, you see them wearing lots of cloth to show their wealth. So there you have it. So we have a merchant class. They're newly wealthy. They're spending money on art, and they're spending money also on games and probably, you know, betting money and things like that. So that's where that all kind of comes together. So I have a lot of visual evidence of these 16th century bird games. One of my favorite is by the artist Peter Bruegel. He was born in 1525 and he died in 1569. And the first painting I'm going to show you is from 1565. It's actually at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And I am going to screen share with you really quickly. Show you.
I have to say I'm always surprised by Annie because I learn things about my operas after I direct them because she finds amazing resources and artistic inspiration and level unlocks for me always.
Well, you're always unlocking these things for me too, Lauren. I see new things because of your shows. So what we're looking at now, this is the big painting called The Harvesters by Peter Bruegel. It was part of a series showing different months, and this one is of autumn. And you can see when we look in the foreground, and I'm using this awesome program, this Google Cultural Institute that allows me to zoom, which is really fun. You can see that there are some laborers, they're resting, they're eating lunch. One of them is clearly a little bit on the drunker side, so relaxing and hanging out. And this is maybe what you might think the whole painting to be about, but actually the painting asks you to enter into it. And little by little, as you progress through the background, you see women walking through these beautiful yellow fields of wheat, deeper and deeper into the city. And this is why this is such a crazy and wonderful program, and something that you can't do when you're at the Met because there are alarm bells and they don't like it when you get your nose up in a painting, but Bruegel wants you to. You can see in the background some kids that have kicked off their clothes and they're swimming, and then over here, a fun little game of kids throwing sticks at a bird who may have at one point been alive but is no longer, hanging here on the edge of a stick. So this little boy clearly has thrown his stick over here and he's run to go and get the bird. There's some other participants, a little girl that maybe wants to play as well, sort of a lonely man. This is an interesting painting to me because I think that it introduces, well, it indicates that there was a popularity to these kinds of sports and games, but it also blends all of the different characteristics of this particular thing. It's a sport, it's a game, it's played by children, everybody's engaged, all these wonderful positive things. But there's also something, I mean, it's competitive, it's brutal, there's a dead bird that keeps getting hit by a stick. So this meshing of these two different kinds of all of these different capacities of humanity, blending the happy and the not so happy, which we really start to see when we get into our opera. So I'm just going to come back and good. So that was the first Bruegel piece, and I am going to show you another one, but I do want to just say that another nice thing about this painting is that it really wants you to dig in, right? You have to search and look and really try to find that little vignette that means so much. And this is something that's really important when we watch the opera. Don't take anything face value. Don't just assume that what the manager is singing at you is true, because there are some hidden truths. And I'll give you one example. One of the managers has a bird named after St. Francis of Assisi, who famously preached to the birds who listened to him. And this manager is very pious. She talks about church. She has the emblems of Jesus with her while she's sitting at her box. But she has some hidden truths, some hidden stories that start to get revealed. So again, nothing is supposed to be taken at face value. So one thing to keep in mind. So the other painting that I would like to show you, also by Bruegel, brings up these same kinds of themes. And I'll just pull up this other painting.
So what I love about this kind of research and diving in general is the fact that when we first approached the opera, most of us in America go, Vinkensport? What's this? How could this be something that's referenced and real? And yet here's all of this research that shows us the long history of this sport, which still continues today. I would challenge everybody to Google Vinkensport, and there are all sorts of fun documentaries that come up if you are so inspired by tonight's film.
So again, children and games, what fun. This looks like so much fun. I was showing this to Loren earlier and she said, it's like Where's Waldo? And that is actually, it's true. There are 280 little kiddos playing. There are 90 different games, and they're all meaningful. They're all associated with different kinds of aphorisms that are shared by people in Flanders at this time. But again, it's fun, right? They're playing games, but there are some darker things going on here. So for example, in the very center, and again, it does take, just like with other painting, a lot of digging to find what you're looking for. But here's a little scene of a wedding, a joyful thing, an important social contract that we engage in. But nearby is a game of blind man's bluff, where the woman can't see, she's searching around. So the idea that the marriage and blind man's bluff are maybe connected, and in fact she's wearing this bright blue garment on her face, another bright blue, we've got some bright blues over here, so they're visually connected. And the bright blue garment over the face was considered, it was kind of a joke at this time, that it was a way of showing an unfaithful wife, as it were. So putting all of these things together, and then in the lower corner there's a woman, you can see she's playing, it's called Bones, and she's just thrown her little game cards on the ground, and they've both come up bad. They're both dogs, which means that she's going to be unlucky in love. So you put all these pieces together, and it's not just a fun little game. And up above, another little bird I'd like to show you. This little boy who's poking his head out the window, and he's shooting a water pistol at a little owl. And of course, again, funny, light, right? But owls are representative of wisdom, as we know. We think of Minerva, and so he's shooting at something that represents something wise. So again, this sort of underbelly of things not being quite what they seem, and worth reflection, and really thinking about what you're seeing and how that matters. Okay, so I'll just stop sharing the screen. I do have one last image that I will get to, but just to say that this opera really helps us think about human behaviors, makes us reflect on them. I mean, we laugh at silly foibles and the like, cute little kids playing games, but when we walk away from it, we need to really think about, in the case of the children's games, oh, what is a wedding? What does it mean? And how do we know it's a good contract? How do we know that it's a good part of society? How do we challenge that? And these are things that I think are relevant to thinking about the managers, to thinking about Vinkensport, to thinking about how it's gone too far, how obsessive the managers become about their birds, and how they lose perspective. They lose the ability to see that it's a game. They become too embedded. They also lose their ability to interact with others, right? They're separated from each other. You'll notice they're all in their own separate frames. And so they've lost that sense of humanity, that connection. And that is because they have become so myopic and focused so much on the sport. And there's one character that wears Coke bottle glasses. So myopia is actually a theme that runs throughout all of this. So I'm just going to show one last image by Hieronymus Bosch. You may know this one quite well, The Garden of Earthly Delights. It's a difficult one to parse, but I thought it was quite fun because it has a scene of birds watching humans being silly and with lost perspective. Lots of them are wearing glass vessels on their heads, changing and manipulating their perspective. Many of them are seeking fruits like strawberries, so they're looking for something that's like a temporary joy, but it doesn't last forever. And they all do seem to be parading towards a hellscape. So that's the end of that. But just to say that I think it's quite interesting that in this painting we have the birds watching this parade of folly, and I think that that's a really interesting thing to think about with the opera, because at one point Loren puts the camera in the bird box, and all of a sudden the bird is looking at the manager, and you start to wonder who's in control, who's watching whom, who's the manager of whom, right? So I'll just show you this one last fun painting, and
I'm going to give a shout out to my co-director, Royce McKinny, whose brilliant idea it was to position cameras in the bird boxes and make sure we have that perspective. It layer unlocks and level unlocks when Annie then throws it into perspective here, saying who's managing whom. I absolutely love that, Annie.
Good. Excellent. Well, I will show you some of these birds as they are now watching the humans, their managers, so to speak, in this incredible painting. Birds come off as being very ominous in this piece. I can show you up at the very tippy top. There they are, sort of swirling, dangerous looking figures. Just zoom in ever so slightly. One of these is actually a goldfinch, but these birds right here that are watching this parade of folly, as I said, and here's an example of a man with a glass vessel on his head, so not seeing straight, not looking straight. And there's an owl, a symbol again of wisdom, and some dopey dude is trying to hug him over here. So so we have a little bit of 16th century paintings reflecting some of the themes that come up in this opera. So I encourage you to play with that painting too. There's a lot to see there. So just to say, I think that this is it's just a wonderful piece. It makes you think about these figures that have maybe lost sight of what really matters and lost sight of the importance of connecting with each other. And I think especially, what a perfect opera for this time that we're in now, where we are separated. And incidentally, the Vinkensport separates their participants by 6 feet. And here we are living in a world of 6 feet apart. And the importance of really not getting too isolated, not becoming myopic, not becoming just in that box, even though I know Loren and I are now in boxes, and we all kind of are. But the beauty of this opera is that it's bringing us together, and we're being allowed to have a conversation about the arts. And thank goodness for that. It'll help break down those boxes. And just thank you so much for letting us have this opportunity to get together, Loren and all the people at HGO and Opera San Antonio. And yeah, it's a great show. You're gonna love it.
Fantastic insight, Annie. I think it's really extraordinary to look at a sport that's had so much history, yet seems new to us here in America, and also has all of these themes that I think are going to allow us to laugh and cry and have heartfelt moments and joyous moments this evening. And it's a really interesting way to have a new community in the world that we find ourselves in. So I know HGO folks are excited to rejoin us. So I'm going to introduce Jeremy Johnson, who's just popped back up on our screen. He is the HGO dramaturg and has lots of other awesome information to share on our film this evening.
Hey guys, thanks for bringing me back on. This is going to be a lot of fun. It was great to hear about the origins of the sport from you, Annie.
Right?
That was very interesting.
Who knew?
You look back and you hear that it was from the late 1500s, but I have always kind of wondered why. Like sure it started in the late 1500s, but it was very interesting to hear why and how it all kind of got started with those Flemish merchants. That's really great.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having us, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the opera itself that you guys are going to watch tonight. Vinkensport, or the Finch Opera, was written in 2010 by composer David T. Little and librettist Royce Vavrek. As Annie introduced for us, the title refers to that sport called finch sitting or finch sport. In the Dutch, sometimes it's called Vinkensport, sometimes it's called Vinkensetting in the Dutch. And, a really interesting sport that Annie told us a little bit about. The managers in the sport, line up their finches, make the tally marks on their long wooden sticks for the number of perfect calls. And that's something I want to talk a little bit about. The perfect mating call from a finch is not just any call. They don't get a tally mark on their stick for every single time the finch makes a noise. They get tallies for when the finch makes what's called a suskewiet, S-U-S-K-E-W-I-E-T, suskewiet. They're called suskewiets because it's an onomatopoeia for what the finch actually sounds like. So I'm going to play for you a sample of a finch making multiple suskewiets in a row. Listen for how the suskewiet rises in pitch at the very end. All right, so here we are learning about finch calls. And you hear the suskewiet at the end there. You hear warble, 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 suskewiet. It's a very strong auditory influence on the opera. I'm now going to play for you a section from the very beginning of the opera where the competitors sing some suskewiets, and the singers and the orchestra alternate between a suskewiet motif that David has composed with these dotted octave leaps for the suskewiet motif. Listen for how that rises in pitch at the end, just like we heard in the Finch. That suskewiet motif will appear in the voices and in the orchestra throughout the opera. In the orchestra, listen for it in the piano, in the flute, and the clarinet. So there are 6 characters in the opera who are playing the roles of the managers, competing in the competition with their finches. And we get to know each of them in little vignettes and flashbacks of their lives. None of the managers in the opera actually have any names. The characters are all named for their finch. For example, the first we get to know is Hans Sachs's trainer. Hans Sachs's trainer named his finch Hans Sachs after the 16th century German poet. Hans Sachs's trainer is really into finch sitting because he's addicted to the adrenaline rush. He's chasing the high of finch sitting, and he also is a coke addict. And his character is loosely based on a real manager who drugged his finch with testosterone to make him call an uncanny number of times. If you remember, Annie pointed out that all of the finches in the sport are male birds, and that's because they're the ones who have that perfect mating call. The perfect suskewiet are the male birds. And so there was this one manager who was accused of injecting his bird with testosterone to do more and more suskewiets throughout the hour. His finch called nearly 1,300 times in 1 hour, which is an unbelievable amount of suskewiets in 1 hour. Still to this day denies that he ever drugged his finch with testosterone. After we meet Hans Sachs's trainer, we meet 2 more trainers, Holy St. Francis's trainer and Atticus Finch's trainer. These 2 are neighbors. Holy St. Francis's trainer is enamored with her neighbor, but Atticus Finch's trainer does not return her feelings. We learn that Holy St. Francis' trainer was married to a man named Wolf, whom she's walked in on cheating on her. She says she feels like a second-class citizen in her own home because of that relationship with her husband. She sings that phrase as part of an independent duet with another competitor, Prince Gabriel III of Belgium's trainer's son. A little bit of a mouthful on that name. Prince Gabriel III of Belgium's trainer's son also feels like a second-class citizen in his own home because he felt his world champion manager father cared more about Vinkensport than about spending time with his son. But his father recently died, so he's tallying Prince Gabriel III of Belgium's Suskowitz in his father's memory. He's still carrying a lot of baggage and bitterness toward his father. He says he used to pray for a mass extinction of finches so that his father would pay attention to him, and so on. But, he says as soon as you lose someone, you start to worry about their legacy. So he's tallying Prince Gabriel III of Belgium's tweets in this competition. We then meet Farinelli's trainer, who is also based on a real-life manager. This is based on a real-life scandal of a manager whose Finch tweeted exactly 725 tweets, 3 competitions in a row. That raised some eyebrows. So after the 3rd competition, the judge opened the box and found a CD player instead of a Finch. So in the opera, we find out that Farinelli, the Finch, died a few years ago, and Farinelli's trainer has gamed the system with a CD player, and she always wins. The last character we meet is Sir Elton John's trainer, named for a relatively famous singer. This trainer doesn't really care much for the sport, but she participates in the competition because her husband wants her to. Her husband owns the company that is the primary sponsor of the competition. She agrees to participate in this one and many other competitions to appease her husband, and then she uses that as leverage to get what she wants from him. And that's all I'll say right now about Sir Elton John's trainer. You'll love watching her scenes. By the time we get through all of the competitors' backstories and get to know them a little bit better, the competition is over and time is called. They tally up the Suskowitz and a winner is named. And that's more or less the end of the opera. Atticus Finch's trainer then sings a goodbye aria to Atticus Finch. It's a really lovely moment. You can tell how much he cares for his bird. And he's letting him go because he says, 10 years is an awful long time for a bird. The aria shines a light on the real humanity that you'll experience tonight, even in the context of an uproarious comedy. You might be wondering, why would anyone even bother writing an opera about finch sitting? Well, one, it's hilarious, and you'll be laughing the whole time tonight. But it's more than just a comedy about a kind of silly sport that hardly any of us in the United States know or care anything about. Yes, all the characters are competing in the sport, but throughout the libretto, we get a deeper look at each of these characters. Here's a quote from composer David T. Little from the program note in the beginning of the vocal score. He says, although a seemingly simple and gentle competition, access to the competitors' inner monologues and flashbacks to their preparations reveal deception, deep-seated rivalries, painful loneliness, and blossoming romance. He goes on, some of the trainer competitors are noble, some not. Some play fair, some don't. Some just don't even want to be there at all. But almost all are lost in the world, finding comfort in the companionship of their birds and in the mere potential for community. So sure, the opera's set around the sport of finch sitting, but like any good opera, it's not really about its setting or its environment. It's about the people and their relationships. Tosca isn't about Rome any more than La Boheme is about Paris on Christmas Eve. They're about the people. It's about, as David said, finding comfort in companionship and in the mere potential for community. Tonight's opera is going to be unlike anything you've seen before. It's not a filmed version of a staged opera. It's an operatic film designed for film. And believe it or not, this actually isn't the first opera film that HGO has produced. Over the last 3 years or so, we've released 3 15-minute opera films as part of our HGO Co. Star-Crossed series, all kind of based around Romeo and Juliet. This is the longest one we've done, so we're really excited for all of you to watch this tonight. It's a lot of fun. We're only another minute away from the digital release of Vinkensport. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Let me bring back on Perrin and Loren to say hello again and kick us off for tonight's presentation. Oh, and Annie, we've got Annie back too. Hello, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
we got the whole team back, which is fantastic. First of all, I want to say thank you to Jeremy, Annie, and Loren. Loren for your brilliance in the co-direction. Annie for your amazing insight into the art around the piece, and Jeremy, as ever, for your brilliant things. Also, want to say thank you to Houston Methodist for keeping us safe. Sarah and Ernest Butler for just being the people that you are and supporting all this digital work through the series. Loren and Opera San Antonio, and of course our wonderful co-production partners at Opera Austin. At Austin Opera, sorry. Annie will kill me. Anyway, it's about time to go for the performance now. Go to Marquee TV. For a direct link, you can visit hgo.org/digital. I'm so excited for all of you to have this experience. As Jeremy and Annie and Loren have said, it's the most amazing, fun, and exciting experience. So it's time to go to the show now. Sign on, get in there, and we'll see you at the end of the show. But please let us know what you think of it, because it's a very different opera that you're going to see tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.